Here we go. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back into another edition of the Patriots Daily Podcast here on the CLNS Media Network. I am Mike Kadlick, in for Taylor Kyles, joined by Alex Barth. We have a little Patriots beat throwback here. I don't think I've seen myself and Barth on a screen together alone for a little while now. We did my one podcast episode.
We did do, yep.
Yeah, it hasn't.
Well,
been
say the name.
Talk.
It's your podcast. Plug it. I thought I taught you better than that.
Behind the mic. Go check it out. It's in my Twitter bio. Behind the mic, where we peel back the curtain on the sports media industry. But that's not what this is. This is Patriots Daily, and we're here for a mailbag episode. It's the offseason. Things are slow, but there's always questions. There's always Patriots stuff. And Alex, me and you haven't chopped up Patriots in quite some time. At least for the fans out there. So this could be an interesting little get-together. But I guess we'll start with this one, and we can preface it with the Devon Godchaux news, because me and Taylor talked about this a lot. We have a couple Patriots Daily shows coming out on YouTube over the course of today and tomorrow. But Devon Godchaux is in the news because he actually tweeted out his sort of side of things and thoughts on their contract negotiations, saying that he wants to sign here, he wants to remain a Patriot, he wants to retire here, but that it has to be good for him and his team and both parties, etc. So, from the old man mob, should the Pats give Davon Godchaux a new contract, and if so, what should the deal look like? Alex, what do you think about this one? What do you think? And what do you think of the question, and then your read on the Godchaux situation as a whole?
Yeah, I talked about this on Catch 22 earlier today with Evan. Like, I don't think you want to be careful giving every single person who asks for more money, yep. Right? And you don't want to set that precedent. And I'm not saying Devon Godchaux is where you draw the line. I actually think the line is somewhere between him and Josh Uche asking, and we don't know this for sure, but Joshua Uche was mentioned in Mike Reese's Sunday Notes as a player who might be looking for a new contract. Dude, you just signed. You haven't played a game.
Yeah, right.
Since you signed your last contract.
You took the hometown discount. Like, you can't just kind of rescind on that right now.
The line definitely exists somewhere in between there. What I'd say with Godchaux is he's 30. He does play his role well, and it is an important role, but I wouldn't call it an expansive role. And you can get good defensive tackles now in the draft. I mean, we see really good early down nose tackles fall in the draft because some teams just don't value that position. We see guys come a little cheaper in free agency. That being said, they are trying to establish a culture. He's an important locker room guy. Mm-hmm. I kind of look at where not defensive tackles. Like, I don't factor in Chris Jones, right, when I look at his evaluation, because Chris Jones, obviously a very different player, does very different things.
Right.
Is Devon Godchaux underpaid for his position a little bit? What I would do, he has like $1 million in roster bonuses. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably part of where his concern comes from, is he's an older player, plays a very physical position in a contract year. If he gets hurt, he doesn't want to be left out to dry. You convert some of those roster bonuses maybe to guaranteed money.
Yeah.
And you give him a little bump that way. I don't know that I'd extend him significantly. Maybe as far as I go, if the money's not bad, I'd give him a year. Mm-hmm. But I'm not rushing to give a fully reworked contract to a 30-year-old nose tackle.
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you on all of that. I think I wrote about this a little bit today for CLNSmedia.com. I'm doing my depth projections on all the position groups heading into training camp, and I touched on the defensive line first, partly because of Devon Godchaux being in the news. And like you mentioned, they're sort of doing this thing where they're rewarding all their guys, right? And, it's obviously good, but you also can't really set that precedent to, as you mentioned, have to pay everybody. And look, Godchaux, you're right, he's 30, and he – or 29 going on 30, and that room is already starting to get younger. One of the first moves this new regime made was cutting bait with Lawrence Guy and saying, hey, you can go, I don't know if he wants to ring chase or kind of go do your own thing, but we're rebuilding here. We're trying to get younger. The next step could be saying, look, Devon Godchaux, you're great, but you're 29, and we have guys in, Jeremiah Farms and even Daniel Acquia, who's a little bit older, but, not asking for that much money. You can just say, look, it was great. We appreciate you, but we're not going to do this. And then it's up to him whether he wants to continue this hold in, whether he wants to maybe be traded. I don't know if they could trade him. I wrote about him as a trade candidate because, like you said, he's in that final year. But I don't see him getting I'm with you that it should be more so a, here's the guaranteed money that, he has no guaranteed money. Here's what you're supposed to be making. We'll give it to you up front. You don't really need to extend them. You have guys in the defensive line room. You just signed Christian Barmore to a fat extension. You don't need to continue to rebuild this room that's already pretty good and has some guys, sort of in the cockpit, if you will. So I'm with you. I don't see this being a necessary move for them. I think this is the one where they could sort of hold out and kind of play hardball with him. So let's go to another one here. This is from Tim Naughton. This is another one. I feel like we answer this every single week on our Patriots Daily Mailbags, but he's also in the news again. He did meet with the 49ers. There was a rumor that he also might have requested a trade to Washington because he's good friends with Jaden Daniels. So what is your thought on Aiyuk with the Patriots? What should be the price, draft picks, and salary? And ultimately, should the Patriots do it?
Yeah, I mean, should they do it? Let's see what the price is. I think it's going to be costly because there's really, you don't just have to give up what Brandon Aiyuk is worth, which is probably a top 50 pick. So for them, that's a second round pick, but you're going to have to outbid other teams.
Right.
So like what some people have said is, all right, well, if you have the Chiefs come in and you pencil them in for a pick that starts with a 3 in the first round, right? 30, 31, 32. And you're the Patriots and you can offer like a pick that's probably also going to start with a 3, 35, 36, 37, something like that. Okay. Can you also offer like a 4th round pick to sway it? Yeah. Okay. Well, then what happens when the Chiefs add a 4th? Because they might do that. And you can keep going up and up like that. There's also the element of the Niners are playing for a Super Bowl. Kyle Shanahan is entering his 8th year at the head of the Niners without a ring. We
haven't had Shanahan talk in a while.
There's not one active coach who's been with his team longer without a ring than Kyle Shanahan. Mm-hmm. So they're all in. Like there's, yes, they could move Aiyuk and get something back for him. I guess that's the incentive. But is that greater incentive than having a maximized roster to try to chase a ring? I don't think it is, especially when you factor in that Deebo Samuel has struggled with injuries. And we heard this at the draft, and I think a lot of people have forgotten about it. Remember when the Niners were going to try to trade Deebo before they were going to try to trade Brandon Aiyuk? Like, what happened to that? Maybe that comes back into play. So that all being said, let's say you actually get on the phone for him. It's definitely going to cost you your 2nd pick. And then I think on top of that, I think it's going to cost you your 2nd, your 4th, and then probably one more middle round pick to get it done. That's a lot for a team that still has a ton of needs. On top of that, you're probably going to need to pay them high 20s per in terms of salary.
Yeah.
It's a lot. I'm not saying they shouldn't do it, but that's a lot, to rush into that right now without seeing the rest of them. Here's the thing. I don't think Aiyuk's getting dealt. Okay. At least not. Maybe we get to the Maybe we get to the trade deadline and maybe they have the Niners have a bunch of injuries and it's going to be a down year for them and they trade him. Like, we can talk again then. But as it stands right now, the other thing is it's a complete seller's market. The Niners have all the leverage. Next year, when Terry McLaurin's going to want a new contract and maybe a guy who could be traded, when DK Metcalf's going to be eligible for a new contract and is a guy that maybe could be traded, and there's a whole other list of receivers that are up next year, I'd make the move then because you may get a better receiver for less.
Right.
So this is not me saying they don't need a receiver. They absolutely do. I think rushing to get it done right now, we've talked about this being a 2 to 3 year rebuild. You don't need to rush to get it done right now and get Brandon Aiyuk. They're going to have opportunities to make this kind of trade, and they may have better opportunities to make this kind of trade if they're just a little bit patient.
That is a good way to look at it. Like you said, you don't need to rush into the receiver because I've mentioned it a million times, but we're not really they're not a 2024 team. They're a 2025 and beyond team. So even a guy like Davon Godchaux, who we just talked about, he shouldn't really be in the plans. Or if you plan on him being a part of the plan for 2025, then extend him. If not, then don't, because this year is going to be kind of a wash. Not that they're going to tank or anything, but there could be other receivers available eventually, so maybe don't pin yourself to Aiyuk necessarily. But if he's available and there's a bidding war and there's a price, at least throw your hat in the ring. I mean, you've seen I feel
I'm not saying don't make the call, but so I personally, feel free to disagree with me, I think DK Metcalf's a better receiver. I think DK Metcalf's a better receiver than Brandon Aiyuk.
Okay.
If you give up, call it a 2nd and 2/4 to get Brandon Aiyuk now. And next year you can get DK Metcalf or T. Higgins or Terry McLaurin for just a second.
Right.
I mean, why does he need to be right? Why does he need to be here this year? We know that wide receivers are going to become available. That is the one position you can count on becoming available via trade. They never come available via free agency. You have to draft these guys or trade for them. But I just like I said about Martin Harrison, Brandon Aiyuk is not the last great receiver that's going to become available. Right. And the Patriots don't need to, he's not the difference between them winning a Super Bowl right now or not. Now, is getting a receiver like that part of the difference between them winning a Super Bowl eventually? Yes.
Right.
But you're going to have other opportunities to get receivers like Brandon Aiyuk. He's far from a one-of-one guy, as talented as he is. None of the guys I just named are one-of-one guys.
They need to do it eventually. They need to find or get that true number one wide receiver. They didn't do it with Mac Jones the entire time he was here. So now I feel like me and Patriots fans and the idea of it, it's like you're chomping at the bit. So every chance you get, you want to connect him to the Patriots. But you're right. It doesn't have to necessarily be right now. But I'm with you. Throw your hat in the ring. See what happens. Don't, again, get into this massive bidding war because, frankly, you might lose it. And I guess if you lose it, it doesn't matter. But it all kind of makes sense. I do think they should be involved in any wide receiver at the top because they need it. It'll help Drake Maye's development. They still have a bunch of twos right now. They could use a number one. We're going to get to the rest of your questions. But before we do, quick word from our friends over at Prize Picks. We'll be right back.
You can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. With the NBA Finals over, the hoops action doesn't stop on Prize Picks. Women's basketball is just heating up, with stars like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese looking to make names for themselves, alongside greats like Breanna Stewart and A'ja Wilson. You can earn up to 100 times your cash watching them ball out. Prize Picks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. I made my first $10 deposit and received an instant $10 bonus. If you have the skills, you can play for a shot at turning your $10 into $1,000. I've got Caitlin Clark for more than 3.5 3-points made and Breanna Stewart for more than 23 points. For baseball, I've got Kyle Schwarber for more than 9-hitter fantasy score and Bryce Miller for more than 4 pitcher strikeouts. Download the app today and use the code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
The questions that we loaded up before. I see this in the chat, and I got to ask you, Alex. Is Kyle Shanahan a top 10 most overrated head coach quarterback guru?
Head coach, yes. Those are two separate things, and I think this is why people get confused. It's not a good. He's an overrated head coach. Great with quarterbacks, great at designing an offense. Not a good head coach.
I don't disagree. I think he is the offense. You can't argue that the offense has sort of been taken over the league. You know what they've sort of built with that outside zone, the McVay stuff. It's kind of all this new age offense. But you're right. At this point, I do think it's fair to say that the head coaching is an issue. I guess I'll kind of leave it at that. You get to the Super Bowl, you can't finish it. You have leads in both, and you kind of lose it. There's not really any excuse. All right, let's go to a defensive question here. This is from Boston 907. Heard a lot about cornerbacks this spring, but didn't hear Marcus Jones or Marcellus Dial's name a lot. Were they non-factors, not involved, or did this guy just miss it?
Yeah, they were both banged up. They were both limited. Yeah. Dial specifically, I'm interested to see. Like, we kind of know what Marcus Jones can do. We know what his role is. Marcellus Dial's a guy that has played on the boundary, but may be able to play slot, may be able to play safety. So I'm interested to see what they do with him. Yeah. But yeah, you didn't miss much. They were both limited for most of the spring, especially those last few days when they really ramped up.
Dial was always a seemingly a lower field guy from the practices we've been at. He was kind of back and forth. Marcus Jones, me and Taylor talk about him a lot as a guy who just strictly as a defender might, be a little bit overrated, but his special team skills bring a lot. So like we didn't see a lot of him. I'm curious to see when he's fully healthy, what he can do with the special teams and, being that a return man and a factor in this new system. But as far as like being non-factors, they just weren't really that available. But let's talk about the room as a whole. How many cornerbacks do we each see making the 53-man roster? Who do you believe will be the last corner to make it on?
I got to pull up my roster projection.
Yeah, I'm going to do the same, but we can sort of workshop it and go Gonzo, obviously.
Yeah, well, so I had 7 corners on my last roster projection on 98.5thesportshub.com. The last guy I had on was Marco Wilson. But you could go Marco Wilson or Shaun Wade. I think the 4 of Austin, Gonzalez, Jones, and Jones, you feel pretty good about. I feel pretty good about Isaiah Bolden. Like it's really Isaiah Bolden, Marco Wilson, Shaun Wade, Marcellus Dial, Mikey Victor, Azizi Hearn. However many guys I just named, 5 or 6 guys for 2 or 3 spots. Is kind of what it boils down to me.
Yeah, I think so too. I think the last guy on for me is also Marco Wilson. Obviously, I think Austin, Gonzo, the Joneses make it. Bolden will be interesting. They didn't really use him much in the what we saw on special teams, and that can kind of be his it factor because he was one of the best, better special teams or return men in college football history. We didn't see that much. I wonder how that factors in. We'll see more of that in training camp. But yeah, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 obviously is the number, and it's going to be between Wilson and Bolden for me.
What that number comes down to is, and this is something if you watch Patriots Beat, I talk about a lot, is the at-large roster positions, right? That you're going to carry at least 4 corners, and a lot. You're going to carry at least 2 quarterbacks, at least 3 running backs, at least 2 tight ends, on and on and on. And there's certain roster spots that can only be one. Your backup quarterback may not be one of the 53 best players on your team, but he's going to make the roster. So now the 53rd best player potentially gets knocked off, and think about it like March Madness. So that's where those other cornerback spots come in, right? For guys like Marco Wilson and Shaun Wade, if they're going to carry a 6th, if they're going to carry a 7th corner. Does Jalen Reagor make the team as a 6th receiver? Do Juju or Tyquan make the team as a 7th receiver? Right. Does Jaheim Bell get on? Do they carry 3 tight ends? They carry 4 tight ends. What happens with a guy like Sam Roberts? Does he get on? Safeties, Jalen Hawkins, right? We're like Kyle Duggar, Marte Mapu, Jabril Pepper. That's enough safeties on your roster to start the season. If you carry a 4th, that's one roster spot that can't go elsewhere. So, the exact number of corners, I'm going to guess it's going to be high. The minimum I usually go with is 4. I would be very surprised if they keep 4. Like, you need 4. You need 4 on the roster just to operate. I would say my minimum for them off their talent is 5. It could be as many as 7, depending on how things fall at other positions.
Yeah, you mentioned it as like an at-large thing in like March Madness. I also kind of think of it as like, like the saying, like, don't cross sports because there's no easy way to compare them. Right. It's like, how do you actually compare the 5th wide receiver and the 5th corner, but you have to do it via special.
Well, you can do that because it's, who's going to make more of an impact. Maybe one guy has more special teams value. Maybe one guy has more scout team value. Maybe you go off the contracts. Maybe one guy's contract is a little easier to keep. Maybe it's a locker room thing. I think there are ways you can do that. It does get trickier. So like another wild card here is Joe Milton. Are you
Joe Milton talk?
You drafted a quarterback 3rd overall.
Yep.
But are you keeping Joe Milton for upside? Are you keeping him for the scout team? Like, is he, do you think you can get him to the practice squad? Does he take up a roster spot? So that's another conversation that comes into play here.
I'll throw my own mailbag question in. Alex, do you have Joe Milton on the roster right now? Is he going to make the team?
I did not have him on just based off, because the way I do my roster projections is I go what we've seen and I cut it there. It's if they had to make the decisions today. So I'm not projecting anything forward. Joe Milton could have a monster preseason. I'm not ruling that out. He's the kind of guy that would.
Right.
That changes the picture a little bit, but I'm not, I'll do the roster projection if and when that happens. I can definitely, I think I had him because I do a like last 3 on, last 3 off.
It's like your own bracketology. It's literally like
I really do it like bracketology. So the next 3 guys, if it's a 56-man roster, right? The next 3 guys I'd put on that I didn't have on, I'll give you both sides of the bubble. Okay. My last 3 on
it's literally like talking about freaking Greg Gumbel and Joe Lenardi or whatever. Go ahead.
My last 3 on were Mitchell Wilcox, Marco Wilson, and Jalen Reagor.
Oh, you have Wilcox on.
Yeah. That's real. I mean, we're talking player 53, player 54 here because my 54th player was Jaheim Bell, followed by Joe Milton, and then Juju Smith-Schuster.
Interesting. Okay.
Wilcox is a blocker. I mean, that one's really going to open. Again, I do it up to this point. There's a lot
from
to
what
be
we've
decided
seen.
there this
I
summer.
understand that they did a lot of like even like 4 tight end sets at sometimes.
Yeah.
They were in like some funky formations, so they're gonna
He
do
was just
something
on the field
weird.
a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I don't hate it, but yeah, it'll be interesting. Again, roster projections at this point in the season, it's tough to do because you really can only use what you saw, and like training camp is the bulk of the decision making.
Right. I always call it the way too early roster projection for a reason.
Yeah. All right. One offensive line question that'll kind of mold into another, but what are the chances that the Patriots starting left tackle isn't even on the team yet? And if he isn't, does Bakhtiari make sense because of his familiarity with Elliott Wolf?
Oh, you're using my kicker line there. No, the starting left tackles.
What's the kicker line?
That is the Patriots week 1 kicker currently.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Which that's kind of how I phrase that take. But the tackle is they seem set on it being a core 4. And it's a rough group that's available. I keep hearing Bakhtiari's name, but the reality is there are teams he's connected to. The Patriots through Elliott Wolf, the Jets through Aaron Rodgers, the Packers that need tackles, plain and simple.
Right.
These are there is a tackle shortage. Every team needs tackles. If there was a remote chance he could play, I think somebody would have signed him by now. This is a guy that's played 13 games in the last 3 years. He has dealt with multiple knee injuries, some of which, at times can be chronic. I get he's a name that people know and he has the Wolf connection. That's all we're basing this on. That's as far as I can go with David Bakhtiari. I can't find a ton of football reasons. Charles Leno's out there. He's a guy that maybe he can play some tackle, some guard, but I think they're going to try to make it work with Chuk's a core 4. And if that doesn't work, I think we're going to see probably either Calvin Anderson or maybe Caden Wallace. Like, I think this is the group they have and they're sticking with it. I don't love that this is the group they have, but the time to add to it is not now. Like, they had their chances to add to it. If they weren't going to add to it before, I don't understand how they add to it now. If
they do it now, it just means that they essentially already think they failed the preseason, the offseason, right? Like the offseason and free agency was the time to go get your left tackle, one of the most important positions on the offense, and they didn't. And now they see if they're already bailing on the experiment that they think they had, which is drafting Caden Wallace as a left tackle and bringing in Okorafor and making him a left tackle, 2 guys that like they literally have like 1 left tackle on the roster in Calvin Anderson. It's just like, it's a weird thing they're trying to do. And I'm with you though, as far as Bakhtiari specifically goes. Like, I think there's something that, frankly, it's not even something we don't know. I think we do know he's very unhealthy. And even though they say he's cleared, teams that, are needy, teams that he's connected to are basically like, yeah, we're good. We appreciate it. We'll go with what we have. The Jets are just piecemealing it just as much as the Patriots are at tackle at this point. They've signed a couple old guys. They've traded for a couple old guys or whatever they've done. And yeah, I think the left tackle is on the team, and I do think it's a core 4 as well. We'll do one more before our next ad because once the smoke and mirrors clears, what do you think the starting O-line looks like from left to right? Alex, you give yours, I'll give mine. They could be the same, but we'll see.
Okorafor, yeah. Okorafor, So, Andrews, Leverett, or sorry, no. Onwenu, Okorafor, So, Andrews, Onwenu, Wallace.
Okay, so
I think I think we saw them kind of start to scramble there at the end of the spring. I think they're moving Mike Onwenu back inside.
I think so too, and I'm
not happy about it, but I think they're doing it.
Yeah, and let's talk about that. Go ahead.
We're gonna get to week 6, and look, they're finally playing him at tackle. Thank goodness! And just like last year, it'll reinvigorate the offensive line.
That's
okay. Had the left tackle and avoided all of this, but whatever.
That's the thing. It's like, okay, you have Caden Wallace, you draft them. The Caden Wallace roller coaster has already been pretty insane, right? Like, they draft him originally. Oh my God, they got a right tackle. What the heck are they doing? They still don't have a left tackle, yada, yada, yada. Then we hear from Wolf like 2 hours or an hour later, and he's like, no, this guy can play left tackle. And we're like, okay, it's still strange. They're going to move him over, but we'll see if they can make it work. Trust in Wolf. And now it's like he's back to right tackle, and they still don't have a left tackle in the future. So it's odd the way it's happened. You paid Mike Onwenu kind of like a right tackle. You said that the plan was to play him at right tackle. Now, granted, guard money has skyrocketed over the last couple of years, and it's not necessarily
paid. He's like the 4th highest paid guard in football. Like, it's not that egregious,
right? I don't think the money's egregious. I just think I don't know, because he's probably a better guard than he is a tackle. But I think the line as a whole seemingly will just play better with him at tackle, and you have Wallace as your left tackle of the future, and then you have your guards, which you drafted late in Robinson. Antonio Mafi's there. He's not that good, but you get the point. Cole Strange can come back. City So can play. It's like the tackle position is still just so bare, and it doesn't seem like they have a solution for it at all.
It's not new. I mean, it's nothing new. I feel like we've discussed this.
I know.
But yeah.
So I think I'm with you though. I think my starting line to start the season is Okorafor, So, Andrews, Onwenu, and Wallace. And I think unless Wallace doesn't come together and make it happen, then maybe it is Nick Leverett at right guard and Onwenu at right tackle, and we'll see what happens there. And then Cole Strange comes back and they kick So back to the others. It's already a mess, and it's been a mess, and they haven't really done much to address it. And it's too bad, but we'll see what happens. All right, we're going to finish up in a few minutes. We're going to get to the rest of your questions after this quick ad read from our friends over at Game Time.
Nothing says summer quite like a live baseball game. And whenever I want to check out a Red Sox game at Fenway, I'm using Game Time, the best place for last-minute deals on tickets. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. With Game Time, it's as easy as finding the game you want to attend, getting a view of the entire stadium to see what prices look like in different areas, and they actually do you a favor and show you both the cheapest tickets available and the best deals. You can also get the view from the seat that you pick, and between their lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, and job loss protection, there's really no better option than Game Time. And with Game Time's lowest price guarantee, the app will actually credit you 110% of the difference if you find a cheaper ticket elsewhere. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
All right, I'm going to use this one from the chat as a jumping off point because Chris Bayless asks, will we see Drake Maye in the preseason or will they hold him out until an O-line is stable? They're going to play Drake Maye in the preseason.
Yeah, they better play him in the preseason. I mean, he needs the reps. He needs to get better.
Yeah.
And he's probably going to be behind the backup O-line, but against backup pass rushers. So, no, if they're not playing him in the preseason, that's a major problem.
Correct.
He should be playing the heavy majority of the snaps in the preseason.
That was going to be my question. How much do you think he plays in the preseason? How much do they hold Jacoby Brissett out in the preseason? And then I don't know if I at least can remember your Drake Maye plan off the top of my head. But what do you expect them for Drake Maye for the season?
So for the preseason, I mean, some of it depends on if Bailey Zappe's still here, right? And
true.
I don't think they're just going to bench him out, right? My guess is we'll get 1 quarter of Jacoby Brissett total. Probably in the second game. He'll start the second preseason game against the Eagles after joint practices. I'm guessing Joe Milton will play the 4th quarter. So this is where it gets tricky. Take Bailey Zappe out of it. I think it's pretty simple. Jacoby Brissett gets 1 quarter of 1 game. Joe Milton gets all 3 fourth quarters. And the rest is Drake Maye. Maybe the 3rd game, Joe Milton gets the entire second half. I think that's a pretty logical plan. Yeah. You throw Bailey Zappe into it. I don't know. Now, does he start? Maybe does he play the 1st quarter of week 1? Drake Maye plays 2 and 3. Joe Milton plays 4. Is it Zappe for 1 quarter and then Drake Maye the rest of the way and Joe Milton doesn't play? And then the next week it's Jacoby Brissett, then Zappe, then Milton, or Zappe makes it cloudier. But I'm going to guess we have 12 quarters of preseason football.
Brissett gets 1, and then you have 11 to divvy up.
So I'm going to say over under 6.5 quarters for Drake Maye in the preseason.
Okay,
out of 12.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I think if Zappe's here, he's a camp and a practice arm. I don't think they're going to throw him out there much in the preseason. There's really no need to. He's your emergency backup. If Maye's not ready, he's your backup quarterback to start the year. I don't think that's going to happen. You still don't really need
they're not going to do that.
I don't think so either. Drake Maye is going to end up as the de facto backup to start the season. Savvy's going to be gone. Maye will play a lot. I think I like that number 6.5. Depending on how it goes, depending on how Brissett feels, all that stuff. But yeah, they're going to play him. That's going to be where you get to see where he can shine against, a live defense and things like that. And then we'll go from there. All right, let's go back to one more offensive line question that we have in here. With all the O-line shuffling, is it safe to assume we've seen the last of Cole Strange as a starter, Alex? When Cole Strange comes back, does he automatically slide in, or what do you think happens with Strange?
Yeah, I don't know that we've seen the last of him as a starter. Like, that's pretty extreme.
Yeah.
Or I don't know, like, safe to assume. I think there's a chance that the offensive line's a mess when he comes back, and they try putting him in there just to see what it looks like. But
right. I
think, his job's certainly in jeopardy, short-term and long-term. And they're on this re-signing spree. I don't know if Cole Strange, the guy that's going to be included in that when the time comes. He's definitely on shaky ground. Would it surprise me if he ends up starting a handful of more games for the Patriots over the next year or two? No, just because they're limited in terms of their offensive linemen. And when he's been healthy, he's had his moments. But I don't, that's as comfortable. So that's as far as I'm comfortable going. Does he start a handful of games over the next 2 years? Maybe.
There's so much that has to happen between now, or that will happen between now and when Cole Strange is ultimately healthy enough to be active for a game, that we really have no idea. Because if the guards are So and Onwenu, So played well last year. Onwenu is a good guard. Even if Strange comes back, those guys might be playing well, even if the tackles aren't.
Right.
There's no real sense to kick him in unless you kick Onwenu out, unless Wallace isn't playing well. If Wallace is playing well, then there's no reason for Strange to come in. Like, there's so much stuff where it's not, by any means, this is not Cole's healthy, get him back in there like it would be with some people. He as much as he's played pretty well down the stretch of the last couple seasons, he hasn't necessarily earned the right to be a shoo-in as soon as he comes back.
I would definitely say that there's no guarantee that there's a job waiting for him.
Exactly. And that's where even having, Layden Robinson as a backup, and I mean, Antonio Mafia hasn't been stellar by any means, but there's guys there where they know what they have and what they don't have in Cole Strange as far as production and injury wise, that they've sort of baked in a contingency plan behind him. So it's definitely, the seat's not waiting for him. But depending on what happens, there's so many factors that he could easily have to be I don't want to call it break glass case of emergency, but a guy who they can slide in there because they just need to figure something out and shuffle things around. All right, let's do one last question from what we got on Twitter, and then we'll sort of check the chat real quick before we get out of here. First one is from Old Man Mom again. Who should be the running back 3 behind Rhamondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson?
Yeah, this is going to be a battle in camp. Kevin Harris, Jermichael Hasty, Terrell Jennings, Deshaun Fenwick. Like, it's way too early to tell. Hasty, I think, had a good spring. He adds a pass catching element those other guys don't. He can play in the kicking game. But the other thing is, so yeah, he had the best spring. Those other 3 guys are all like 220-pound backs. And they're going to be at their best when the pads come on and there's contact. Exactly. So we got a long way to go to answer this. I wouldn't rule out outside candidates as well. This is going to be a battle we're going to follow all summer. Yeah,
again, it's easy to, I'm not saying just you, but everybody to say that Hasty won the spring because he's a pass catching back in basically a passing camp and 7-on-7s and things like that. And there's no tackling. Like, it's impossible for Kevin Harris to win the offseason program on the field because he doesn't really do much besides as a bowling ball running back. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be a battle. I think Hasty, again, was solid. I think Kevin Harris has been a practice squad guy for this team for a long time. And frankly, if he doesn't get cut or if he does get cut and comes back on the practice squad, he'll probably do the same thing he has in the last couple of years. So it'll be interesting. This is one of the battles to watch, but I do think obviously Stevenson gets his extension and Antonio Gibson first year on the job of the Patriots. Those guys are shoo-ins and locks, and then we'll go from there. Yep. All right, Alex, one last question before we get you out of here on this Pat's Daily episode. What needs to happen for the Patriots to be at least 500 or better this season?
CJ Stroud. Like Drake Maye needs to be CJ Stroud. He needs to just come in and instantly elevate talent. That's it. The defense will be good. Can they be that good? I don't know. When you look at some of the question marks on offense, You need Drake. You need one of two things. Either Drake Maye needs to come in and elevate instantly, or the offensive line just somehow needs to be a top 15 unit in the league. And Drake Maye being CJ Stroud may be more likely, just given the personnel available. So that's what's going to take.
Fair. I think again, you're right. I mean, the defense is fine. The defense is going to be fine. They're a serviceable NFL unit.
They're more than serviceable. I mean, the defense is really good, but the defense was really good last year, and they won 3 games.
Exactly.
So that's kind of where can the defense alone be where they need 9? They need to get to 9 to be 500. Can the defense alone be 6 games better?
Right. Probably not.
That's a lot. That's asking a lot. They would have to sign Stephon Gilmore and have him be 2019 Gilmore. If Judon's 2021 Judon, if you get Michigan Jabril Peppers, which I guess he was close to last year. If Devon Godchaux adds a pass rush element, Alex Austin exceeds the hype, right? Maybe they get you like 4 games, but it's tough.
My point being was that it's all on the offense, and it does have to be Drake Maye. The offensive line, the shuffling and reshuffling, and this guy can play left and right tackle, blah, blah, blah. All that stuff has to hit. And even still, I don't know if that gets you past 500. You still have to, get the wide receiver room right. The offense still has to click and still has to score a ton of points. Like, it's a lot, and that's a lot to throw on a rookie quarterback. Jacoby Brissett, if he plays all season, isn't getting 9 wins. So it's going to be tough. A lot of stuff has to hit. I'm with you. It has to be a Texans type rebuild trajectory and not the long-term one that they're planning on. So that's going to do it for this episode of Patriots Daily. Alex, before we let you go, what is coming down the pipe on Patriots Beat with you and Brian? What do you have going on that you can plug?
Yeah, so we did a show yesterday. I think this is going to be a 1-week show, 1 show a week for us, but we did a show yesterday. We gave our takes on the Rhamondre Stevenson contract. I also did Catch 22 with Evan earlier today. We talked Rhamondre Stevenson. We talked spring winners and losers, and actually working on some Red Sox and Celtics stuff over on 985thesportshub.com. You can check that
Sox. What are your thoughts on the Red Sox? We don't have a Boston Sports Minute on Pats Daily, but what's going on?
I can find it. I know where it is. Right. I thought I knew where it was. Hang on. I can find it.
Might be a different studio.
Give me a second. Yep. Hang on. There it is. I don't know if you saw what Ken Rosenthal said today about the Red Sox and Red Sox ownership, but
they have to. I did see this.
In short, he basically said the players and coaches have done everything. If this is an ownership group that has shown no interest in trying in the last 2.5 years, and there's not a ton of reason to think that will change at the deadline. But if it doesn't, shame on them. Shame on them, because it damn well should, because these players and coaches deserve a ton of credit for what they've done here over the last month, and their schedule's super easy for the next 3 weeks, so it's probably going to keep going, at least to an extent. So I kind of just wrote about that. Rosenthal's right. No more half measures. I'm not saying trade all the prospects and totally sell out, but can you get a legitimate, doesn't have to be an all-star. Can you get a legitimate major league shortstop? Can you get a legitimate major league starting pitcher, even if it's a back of the rotation guy, just to round things out? Can you flip Kenley Jansen for a young reliever with term, or maybe 2 relievers to stretch out the bullpen? None of those are massive asks. Maybe all 3 of them at once would be a lot, but if you can do 2 or 3, that'd be great. Nobody's asking them to suddenly turn this team into a World Series contender, but give them some juice, give them a chance, because this could be a year you can build on.
I agree. I think you got to buy. You always got to buy. You're the Boston freaking Red Sox. You have all the money in the world. Okay, quickly, since we have the backer up, thoughts on the Allmark trade?
I don't think I'm as out of on it as most people. Same. I don't like it. It's more so I think people are already writing it off. I don't know. I'll give Don Sweeney, and Bruins fans might roll their eyes at this, but I'll give Don Sweeney the benefit of the doubt. Let's see what they do with the 25th pick. Because if they hit on the 25th pick, it looks brilliant. If they get a legit top 6 forward, top 4 defenseman, whatever they're going to use that pick on, if they get a guy, if they get a dude, great trade. If not, you're basically counting on what's that? I keep seeing that guy's name and thinking it says Kadlick.
Yeah, I know.
You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, I just can't remember it.
If not, now I got to hang on. This is going to bug me. If not, you're basically counting on Mark Kostelic.
Yeah.
You're counting on Mark Kostelic to be hockey Connor Wong, because there are some similarities with the Mookie Betts trade here, and I don't think I'm the first to have that take, but he's kind of the throw in, the last guy. That's what Connor Wong was. You're counting on him to really elevate because he's a fourth line center. They need a fourth line center. They need a guy with some size and physicality. I'm not saying like they didn't need him, but you traded a guy who won the Vezina less than 12 months ago. And you got that, like, you better get more than a physical fourth line center for him. And I just think Korpisalo's cooked. I know goalie Bob and all that, but I think Korpisalo's cooked. So,
yeah, take away the goalie, take away the center, right? You got a first round pick for a guy that you probably were going to have to get rid of at some point. It wasn't going to work with two goalies much longer. The pay's too much, all that stuff. You dumped the last year of the deal, blah, blah, blah. But could you have gotten more? Maybe. I'm just so team Swayman here, and I think that's just the answer long term, that whatever you could do to get rid of Ullmark, you get the first round pick back and you see what happens. It's wait and see. I don't think they lost it yet. I agree with you that if you hit on the pick, it's a win, because you take away the what ifs in the goalie room. Not that there was any. Swayman's the guy, but I'm just happy that they were able to get something for him. So I believe that's going to do it for today's Patriots Daily. Myself and Taylor will be back tomorrow. We went through the defensive line room again, and there should be a video coming up shortly on the channel diving into Devon Godchaux and his contract situation. So myself, Taylor, will be back in some form or fashion on Patriots Daily later this week. Until then, rate, review, subscribe. Check us out on Patriots Press Pass. And, we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, and thanks for tuning in. See ya.